In 2013, 30% of American high school students reported persistent sadness or hopelessness. By 2023, that number was 40%. Among teenage girls, specifically, it was 57%. The rate of teenagers who seriously considered suicide has climbed 43% since 2009. Suicide is currently the second leading cause of death for Americans between the ages of 10 and 34. The US Surgeon General has issued a formal advisory calling it a crisis. The CDC calls it a crisis. Researchers who have spent their careers studying this call it a crisis. At the same time, something is happening politically that has no real parallel in modern history. Young men and young women in their teens and 20s are diverging politically at a pace no prior generation has ever experienced. In the 2024 presidential election, young women under 30 preferred Kamala Harris by 17 points. Young men under 30 preferred Donald Trump by 14 points. That's a 31-point gap between young men and young women of the same generation living in the same country. Zoom into individual swing states and the numbers become almost unbelievable. In Michigan and Pennsylvania, the gender gap among young voters was 64 points. In North Carolina, 56. Two groups of people roughly the same age, living in the same cities, attending the same schools, who have arrived at completely incompatible versions of reality. And this is not an American phenomenon only. South Korea's 2022 presidential election showed a 41-point political gender gap between young men and women. The United Kingdom, Germany, Spain, the same pattern is appearing in almost every country where young people have smartphones. And then add to the equation that an entire generation now struggles to read a full page of text. Teens describe being unable to sit through movies they actually want to watch. Adults who were perfectly functional readers 5 years ago now pick up a book and can't hold a thought for more than a few minutes. Teachers report that students who arrived at college just a decade ago and those arriving today feel cognitively different in ways that are increasingly hard to ignore. And none of this is a coincidence. All of it traces back to a single piece of software. Engineered in Beijing, deployed globally, and optimized so ruthlessly for human attention that it did something no medium before it had managed to do at scale. Not just changing what people were watching, rewiring how they think. And the story of how that happened is one of the most consequential stories of the 21st century. In March 2012, a 29-year-old software engineer named Zhang Yimin rented an apartment in Beijing's tech district and co-founded a company called ByteDance. His first product was Toitoao, roughly headlines in English, an AI-powered news aggregation app that reached 1 million daily active users within 4 months of launch. The insight that would also make Zhang one of the wealthiest people on earth was deceptively simple. Don't let editors decide what people see. Instead, let the machine learn what any individual person responds to and keep serving them more of that. And it worked well for news. Unfortunately, it worked even better for short videos. In September 2016, ByteDance launched Douyin, a short-form music video app targeted at young urban Chinese users. They spent roughly $3 million per day promoting it domestically in 2018. And within half a year, Douyin had 150 million daily active users inside China alone. And then they went international. A Shanghai-based lip dancing app called Musical.ly had, by 2017, accumulated roughly 100 million monthly active users, and that user base was almost entirely American and European teenage girls. ByteDance bought Musical.ly in November 2017 for approximately $1 billion. On August 2nd, 2018, Musical.ly was folded into TikTok, all user accounts migrated over, and the platform that now has 1.9 billion monthly users was born. What ByteDance effectively purchased with that deal was an entire generation of Western teenagers already organized, already habituated to the format, and then plugged them into a recommendation engine far more sophisticated than anything Musical.ly ever used. Musical.ly relied on the accounts you chose to follow. TikTok's algorithm required no social connections at all. It just watched what you watched. The system is built around one metric: watch time. Every video competes for survival. Skipped past the first 3 seconds, the video dies. Watch to the end or watch it again, the algorithm amplifies it to more people. Every pause, every replay, every fraction of a second spent hovering before swiping away feeds back into a machine learning model that's continuously updating its model of exactly what this specific user will keep watching. Behavioral psychologists have a term for how this reward structure works: a variable ratio reinforcement schedule. It's the same mechanism that makes slot machines the most addictive form of gambling ever designed. The reward doesn't come on a fixed schedule. Sometimes the next video is the funniest thing you've seen all week. Sometimes it's nothing. The unpredictability, not knowing which swipe is about to be the perfect one, is precisely what keeps you swiping. An internal TikTok algorithm document leaked to the New York Times in 2021, confirmed authentic by TikTok, showed the ranking formula explicitly. At its core, it predicted probability of action and then multiplied how much TikTok values that action. The primary business goal, per the document, was maximizing daily active users through time spent and retention. A Wall Street Journal investigation creating over 100 automated accounts found TikTok built a working preference model in as little as 2 hours. Average users watch roughly 180 videos per day. They open the app approximately 19 times. The growth was unlike anything the social media industry had seen before. From 271 million monthly active users in 2018 to 700 million by 2020 to 1 billion by 2021 to 1.9 billion today. In the United States alone, roughly 170 million people use TikTok as of 2024, more than half the country's population. The average American user spends 58 minutes per day on it. American teenagers average 87 minutes. 8% of American teens spend more than 5 hours a day on TikTok. ByteDance recorded $155 billion in total revenue in 2024, a 29% increase from the year before. Net profit hit $33 billion for 2024. And for context, ByteDance's first quarter 2025 revenue of $43 billion surpassed Meta's $42.3 billion for the same period. The company's second market valuation has been estimated as high as $480 billion. Deng Yiming, despite stepping down as CEO in 2021, still controls approximately 20% of ownership with over 50% of voting rights. His personal net worth is estimated at $65.5 billion at 41 years old. TikTok itself generated $23 billion in revenue in 2024, a 42.8% increase from the year before. And then there's TikTok Shop, which launched in the United States in September 2023 and grew at a pace that alarmed Amazon. Global gross merchandise value went from under $1 billion in 2021 to $33.2 billion in 2024, a 37-fold increase in 4 years. US sales grew 407% in 2024 alone. 71% of TikTok Shop users report making purchases after seeing products in their feed. The platform now hosts over 15 million merchants globally. Oxford University Press named brain rot its word of the year for 2024. They defined it as the alleged decline of a person's mental or intellectual condition due to excessive consumption of low-quality digital content. Usage of the term increased 230% from 2023 to 2024. More than 37,000 people participated in the vote. Even Pope Francis used it in a formal communications address. A 2025 meta-analysis published in the APA's Psychological Bulletin, one of the most respected journals in psychology, reviewed 71 separate studies covering nearly 100,000 participants. It found that significant short-form video consumption correlates with diminished attention span, weaker inhibitory control, reduced working memory capacity, increased depression, anxiety, stress, and loneliness, declining academic performance, and greater difficulty with sustained focus. A January 2026 study published in Nature used fMRI brain imaging, machines that track actual blood flow in the brain, on participants watching either long-form videos or short-form clips matched for the same total content and duration. The short-form group showed poorer memory accuracy and reduced activation in brain regions responsible for information integration, cognitive control, and semantic processing. A 2023 study from Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich gave college-aged participants a memory task, interrupted them for 10 minutes with TikTok, Twitter, or YouTube, and then had them return to the task. TikTok destroyed prospective memory, accuracy dropped to near random guessing. Twitter and YouTube had no measurable impact. That finding was independently replicated in 2025. A separate 2023 study using fMRI demonstrated that watching preferred short videos significantly activates the amygdala, the brain's emotional reactor, while simultaneously deactivating the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the seat of long-term planning, impulse control, and complex reasoning. In other words, TikTok quite literally suppresses the part of your brain responsible for telling you to stop watching TikTok. A 2025 EEG study documented a 22% reduction in prefrontal cortex beta power after just 20 minutes of social media engagement. Now, the science on how much of this is casual versus correlational is still actively debated. Oxford researchers have argued that associations are weaker than headlines suggest. A 2026 study from the University of Manchester tracked teenagers over multiple years found no detrimental impact on anxiety or depression in their framing. What is not contested is the platform's own internal data. Court filings by the Nebraska Attorney General in 2024 surfaced TikTok's own research showing users identified overusing and causing negative emotions and interfering with their daily lives. The most visible downstream effect is what heavy users describe themselves. Nearly 50% of TikTok users say videos longer than 1 minute feel stressful. People who have used the platform for years describe being unable to read books, sit through films, or hold a conversation without the urge to pick up their phone. Human attention on digital devices declined from roughly 150 seconds on average in 2003 to 47 seconds today. Gen Z, which is the first full cohort to grow up inside short-form video, shows the sharpest effects. Teens today spend only 30 to 60 minutes per day with friends in person. That's down from 2 hours before 2010. Half of all American teenagers say they feel addicted to their phones. Young people now average 6.5 hours daily online. The majority of it is short-form video. What happens specifically to the mental health of teenage girls is its own separate chapter in this story, so keep watching for that. But CDC Youth Risk Behavior Survey data tracks it with unusual precision. In 2013, 30% of high school students reported persistent sadness or hopelessness. By 2021, that figure was 42%. By 2023, 40%. Still 10 points higher than a decade earlier. And when you break it down by gender, in 2021, the figure for female students was 57% compared to 28% for males. 1 in 5 high school students seriously considered attempting suicide in the prior year. Since 2009, the percentage who actually attempted it increased 43%. Instagram's own internal research found that 32% of teenage girls said the app made their body image issues worse. TikTok's bold glamour filter, released in 2023, uses AI to sculpt the user's face in real time, thinning noses, lifting cheekbones, and brightening eyes. It appeared in over 91 million videos. Board-certified plastic surgeons began reporting that rhinoplasty, or nose jobs, had gone from outside their top 3 most common procedures to the #1 procedure among Gen Z patients almost overnight, with many patients bringing TikTok filtered screenshots as reference images. This subject matter can be hard to digest, but for most Americans, their personal financial situation is the hardest subject to approach and manage. But with the Dollarwise budgeting app, you can finally take control, and since there's a free trial, you can see for yourself, get a full picture, automate your budget, get powerful insights, and set real goals that change your life. Download Dollarwise or go to dollarwise.com. A 2024 study found that TikTok's algorithm delivered 4,343% more eating disorder content to users with known histories of disordered eating. And then there are the children who died. The Blackout Challenge, which encouraged users to choke themselves until they lose consciousness, has been linked to between 15 and 20 children's deaths. When TikTok was called before Congress about the blackout challenge, they told legislators the challenge had never been on its platform. In August 2024, the Third Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that TikTok's algorithm constitutes the platform's own expressive speech, meaning Section 230 protections, the legal shield that has protected social media companies from liability for user content since 1996, may not apply when the platform's own algorithm actively promotes content that causes harm. The lawsuit filed by those children's families are still working through the courts. One of the strangest and most significant disturbing phenomena TikTok produced was what researchers describe was a new form of mass psychogenic illness. During 2020 and 2021, researchers at Hanover Medical School documented a worldwide surge in teenage girls suddenly developing explosive, uncontrollable tic-like behaviors. They found that multiple teenagers presenting with sudden tics had all been watching the same British female TikTok creator before symptom onset. Their presentations were medically inconsistent with genuine Tourette syndrome in revealing ways. 64% were female, even though actual Tourette syndrome has a 4-to-1 male ratio. 93% exhibited involuntary swearing, compared to just 10 to 15% in real Tourette cases. ER visits for tic disorders among adolescent girls aged 12 to 17 tripled between 2019 and 2021. Mass psychogenic illness, where symptoms spread through social media exposure rather than physical contact, historically required people to be in the same physical location. TikTok transmitted it digitally across the world simultaneously. That has never happened before in recorded history. In 2024, research documented what they called the largest gender gap ever recorded in any generation of American voters. Among Americans aged 25 and younger, there was a 20-point gap in Democratic Party support between young men and young women. 52% of Gen Z women identified as Democrats. Only 33% of Gen Z men did. 38% of Gen Z men identified as Republicans, while 20% of Gen Z women did. Trump's approval among young men was 47%, whereas among young women, it was 26%, a 21-point gap. Young women under 30 are twice as likely as young men to name TikTok as their primary news source. Young men are far more likely to get their information from YouTube and podcasts. These are completely different information ecosystems with different content profiles, different algorithmic incentives, and different creator communities. And they are producing people who do not share a factual reality. On TikTok, left-leaning political news influencers outnumber right-leaning ones 28% to 25%. Among US TikTok users overall, 52% identify as Democrat or lean Democrat, while 40% identify as Republican. 22% of users describe the platform's content as politically left-leaning, while only 6% say conservative. A Washington Post analysis of over 800 US adult TikTok feeds across 6 months found that female users were served approximately 11% more content featuring then-candidate Kamala Harris than male users were. TikTok's algorithm is not politically neutral. It actively sorts its users by gender into different ideological realities. So what does that reality look like for a young woman who uses TikTok as a primary news source? A continuous stream of progressive identity politics, feminist grievance content, social justice advocacy, and environmental alarm, with creators who push back against that consensus facing suppression, demonetization, or banning, while creators who deliver exactly what their audience wants are amplified. And over time, the false consensus effects takes hold. Users come to believe their views are far more widely shared than they actually are, because everyone in their algorithmically constructed feed agrees with them. This was demonstrated on election night in 2024 in a way that was genuinely remarkable to watch in real time. Millions of young TikTok users expressed not polite surprise, but genuine disbelief that Donald Trump's victory, having spent months inside a feed that presented a Kamala Harris landslide, as not just possible, but essentially settled. And the most extreme version of this radicalization playing out on TikTok is a movement called the 4B movement, which originated in South Korean radical feminist circles around 2017. The 4B movement advocates for 4 rejections: no sex with men, no giving birth, no dating men, and no marriage to men.
That's really the only other option. But collectively brutality away from
Following the 2024 US presidential election, the movement gained explosive traction on Western TikTok. Over 19,000 videos were posted within days of Trump's victory. Google searches for the movement surged 450%. One video about a young woman breaking up with her Republican boyfriend received nearly 2 million likes. In practice, the 4B movement on Western TikTok was predominantly performative. Enormous engagement, limited evidence evidence of mass real-world adoption. But even as a performance, it reveals something meaningful. A segment of young women who have been inside this algorithmically sealed bubble long enough have arrived at a place where traditional gender dynamics are framed as inherently oppressive, men as a collective threat, and total social withdrawal as the rational response. That is what the algorithm produced in its most engaged female users. For young men who drifted right in the same period, the pipeline runs through YouTube and podcasts, platforms that reward longer, more independent-minded formats. Joe Rogan's Trump interview before the 2024 election was viewed over 50 million times. Andrew Tate, despite being banned from TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, accumulated over 13 billion views under his hashtag on TikTok alone through clips posted by his affiliate network. Tate ran something called Hustlers University, a $49.99 a month online community whose members were explicitly instructed to flood TikTok with his most provocative clips and deliberately start arguments and wars online. By August 2022, Hustlers University had over 100,000 paying members, and Tate was receiving more Google searches than Donald Trump and Kim Kardashian combined. He was banned from TikTok in August 2022 for misogynistic content, but it didn't stop the clips. He ended up getting arrested in Romania in December 2022 on charges of rape, human trafficking, and organized crime. And as of 2026, he faces 6 active legal investigations across 3 countries. But he denies everything and still has over 10 million followers on X. We'll hold judgment for now and allow those legal proceedings to pursue. But what we see in the end are 2 groups in the same generation sorted by algorithms into opposing ideological universes. Both groups believe they are seeing the mainstream, that they are the majority, that everyone thinks the way they do, and anything outside of what they think is evil or not normal. But they're both wrong. A 2025 study analyzing over 160,000 accounts and 16 million videos confirmed that TikTok's algorithmically curated filter bubbles reinforce ideological segregation. A University of Oregon study found that only 9% of regular TikTok users reported their political ideology had not shifted at all during their time on the platform. But intellectual honesty requires acknowledging what the research does not yet conclusively prove. The strongest version of TikTok systematically radicalizing young women to the far left is found more in commentary than in peer-reviewed literature. Some academic research suggests self-selection. People seeking content that already confirms existing beliefs may matter as much as algorithmic nudging. The most defensible conclusion is that TikTok acts as an accelerant. It takes pre-existing tendencies and amplifies them to the extremes faster and more completely than any prior media environment ever could. But the gap between where this generation has ended up and where any prior generation landed at the same age is not explained by pre-existing tendencies alone. Something is happening in the process. The platforms are not passive mirrors, they're active sorters, and the thing they are sorting is engagement, not coherence, not balance, and definitely not political moderation. Now, the political polarization gets most of the attention, but what the platform has done to ordinary social behavior deserves equal attention because it affects people who never thought of themselves as political at all. TikTok has industrialized mob justice. The platform's architecture is optimized for outrage. A video accusing someone of misconduct can reach 10 million views in hours before any fact-checking occurs. The algorithm surfaces it broadly because outrage drives completion rates. Viewers share without verifying. Cancel hashtags trend. Advertisers receive organized mass emails, and players are flooded with 1-star reviews. The target's livelihood can be destroyed before any independent investigation begins. West Elm Kayla became a prime example. In January 2022, multiple women in New York City discovered through TikTok that they had all dated the same 25-year-old furniture designer, but his actual offenses? Ghosting women after dates and sending the same Spotify playlist to multiple matches. But the hashtag accumulated 33 million views. His full name, LinkedIn profile, phone number, home address, and workplace were all published across the platform. Dating apps ran ads using his hashtag. Hellman's Mayonnaise retweeted jokes about him. His entire social media presence was deleted. One of the original posters later told Rolling Stone it wasn't productive, it was just destroying someone's life. And then Couch Guy, September 2021, illustrates something even more disturbing. A college student posted a 19-second video of herself surprising her long-distance boyfriend. And his crime, according to TikTok, taking approximately 5 seconds to stand up from a couch where he was sitting near female friends. The hashtag eventually hit 702 million views. Millions of users conducted what one commentator called the most intense forensic investigation since the Kennedy assassination, analyzing microexpressions, body language, and arm positioning. A neighbor slid a note under his dorm room door requesting an interview. The boyfriend later wrote in Slate that he was the subject of frame-by-frame body language analysis, armchair diagnosis of psychopathy, comparisons to convicted murderers, and general discussions about my bad vibes. No infidelity was ever established, and the mob disbanded when the next target appeared. A 2025 research analysis into one high-profile cancel campaign found that 15% of the negative commenters were fake accounts, yet they generated over 77,000 engagements and a 4,000% increase in negative sentiment, successfully pressuring a brand over a conspiracy theory that was entirely fabricated.
Is not backing down and says she looks forward to any upcoming trial.
The Idaho murder case TikTok investigators falsely accused multiple innocent people of the 2022 killings, people whose lives were upended by millions of views of allegations, of which none turned out to be true. What the political TikTok ecosystem rewards above all else is performative virtue. The most successful progressive creators on the platform frequently have no substantive policy positions. They cycle through trending social justice language, apply it to whatever news story is circulating, and harvest engagement. These creators rarely correct themselves when facts change. They never acknowledge complexity. They treat any moderation as betrayal. The audience doesn't want nuance. The algorithm has already filtered for users who only want confirmation. In 2025, an entire viral subculture built around what creators called the macho male, a specific archetype of men who superficially adopted progressive, feminist aesthetics as a dating strategy, carrying feminist literature and making progressive public statements as deliberate manipulation tactics. The trend was widely treated as comedy, but what it actually revealed was a culture of such intense performative ideological conformity that people were constructing fake political identities to navigate it. And there's some evidence that the cultural backlash against this era is building. Observers note growing exhaustion with the totalizing nature of performative online culture, a rising public skepticism of cancellations, and what some describe as a collapse under the weight of its own internal contradictions. But in the end, maybe people are just finally growing up. TikTok's success forced every major platform to rebuild itself around short-form vertical video. Instagram launched Reels in 2020, YouTube launched Shorts in 2021, Snapchat expanded Spotlight, even LinkedIn added short-form video. YouTube Shorts now receive over 200 billion views per day. Instagram Reels accounts for 38.5% of all Instagram posts. Short-form video now represents roughly 82% of all internet video traffic. The TikTokification of the internet is complete. But despite this competition, TikTok remains the highest engagement rate in the category, 2.8 to 3.15%, compared to Instagram Reels at 0.65% and YouTube Shorts at under 1%. The core algorithmic advantage, the ability to lock any user into a personalized content loop faster than any competitor, has not been successfully replicated. The creator economy on top of this is massive at the top and brutal for everyone else. Charli D'Amelio became TikTok's most followed creator by dancing, 155 million followers before age 20, a Hulu docuseries, and a cosmetics brand. Khaby Lame reached 162 million followers making wordless reaction videos. Top earners make between $10 million and $25 million per year, but the average creator makes almost nothing. TikTok's original creator fund paid roughly 2 cents to 4 cents per thousand views, about $20 to $40 per million views, versus YouTube's $2,000 to $5,000 per million for comparable content. The replacement creativity program is better, but still dramatically below what YouTube pays. Take a moment and get some free, easy money. With a Chime checking account and my link, you can get $350 when you set up direct deposit, and pair that with a nation-leading high-yield savings rate. There's literally no reason not to sign up right now. Chime.com/Caleb or link in the description below. 90% of creators report experiencing burnout. 65% report anxiety or depression related to their work. 1 in 10 report suicidal thoughts tied specifically to content creation, nearly double the national average. Some of the platform's most bizarre viral moments capture what the attention economy looks like when taken to its logical endpoint. NPC streaming became a genuine phenomenon in 2023. Creators acting like video game NPCs, repeating robotic catchphrases in response to a small virtual gift purchased by viewers in real time. Pink Doll became the breakout star for this genre, earning between $2,000 and $3,000 per stream and up to $7,000 per day repeating "ice cream so good" and "gang gang" on loop. By the way, if you liked my impression, make sure to give this video a like, love you. And a single tweet of her live stream hit nearly 50 million views. It was widely criticized as degrading, but the criticism missed the point. NPC streaming is what happens when the attention economy rewards any behavior that extracts payment regardless of its content or meaning. The streamers understood what TikTok rewards better than anyone. TikTok's content house era produced its own chaos. The Hype House, co-founded in December 2019 and billed as TikTok's version of a Hollywood studio, peaked at 21 members, including Charli D'Amelio and Addison Rae. It imploded like no other. Co-founder Daisy Keech departed in March 2020, posting a 22-minute expose accusing management of financial mismanagement. The D'Amelios left in May 2020. COVID parties at the house led to the LA mayor shutting off the building's water and power. A Netflix reality series launched and flopped. The landlord eventually sued for $300,000 in unpaid rent and severe property damage. 42 people cycled through the collective over its lifespan. Creator Alex Warren later summarized, "No one made money from the Hype House except Thomas." In September 2021, a TikTok user posted a video of a student stealing disposable masks from school, captioning, "A month into school, devious lick." Within days, students across the United States, Canada, Australia, and Germany were stealing soap dispensers, sinks, urinals, mirrors, fire extinguishers, and toilets from school bathrooms. The hashtag hit 235 million views before TikTok banned it. 9 students were arrested in a single Florida county. One Tennessee district reported over 100 incidents across 14 schools. The Washington Post later reported that Meta, Facebook's parent company, paid a Republican consulting firm to coordinate media campaigns amplifying the devious licks trend without disclosing Meta's involvement. Even TikTok's competitors recognized that the platform's worst moments were marketable ammunition against it. And the national security dimension of TikTok runs alongside all of this, separate from the cultural damage, but worth discussing in this documentary. ByteDance is a Chinese company subject to China's National Intelligence Law of 2017, which legally obligates all Chinese organizations and citizens to cooperate with state intelligence operations when required. ByteDance established an internal CCP committee in 2014, upgraded to a full party committee in 2017. In 2021, a state-owned fund co-owned by the Chinese Communist Party purchased a 1% golden share in ByteDance's main Chinese subsidiary, which came with a board seat for a career government propaganda official. In 2022, BuzzFeed News published leaked audio from over 80 internal TikTok meetings. A trust and safety employee stated on recorded audio, "Everything is seen in China." A director referred to a Beijing engineer as a master admin with access to everything. ByteDance later confirmed that employees accessed data belonging to Forbes journalists to track their physical locations and identify internal leakers, a surveillance operation it initially denied, then admitted. Romania's 2024 presidential election produced what may be the most concrete real-world example anywhere of what algorithmic manipulation of elections actually looks like. Romanian authorities uncovered a Russian-backed influence campaign orchestrated through TikTok, a coordinated network of over 25,000 fake accounts, concealed financial transactions totaling over $879,000 paid to 265 users through cryptocurrency and in-app gifts, all designed to artificially inflate support for a far-right, pro-Russian candidate. The manipulation surged the candidate's support from 5% to 23% in weeks. The Romanian Constitutional Court took the unprecedented step of annulling the entire national election. Then Congress moved. The Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary-Controlled Applications Act passed the House 352 to 65, was signed by President Biden, and was upheld by the Supreme Court 9-0 in January 2025. TikTok went dark for approximately 14 hours on January 18th and 19th, 2025, the first time a major social media platform had actually been shut down in the United States. On March 23rd, 2023, TikTok CEO sat before the House Energy and Commerce Committee for 5 hours of bipartisan grilling. Committee Chair Kathy McMorris Rogers opened. "Your platform should be banned." Representative Kat Kamak played a TikTok video showing a gun firing with a threatening message about the hearing that had been posted weeks earlier, and asked the CEO, "You expect us to believe that you are capable of maintaining the data privacy and security of 150 million Americans when you can't even protect the people in this room?" And the CEO's response to questions about Chinese data access? "I don't think spying is the right way to describe it," drew audible groans from the audience. Hours before the hearing, a Chinese official stated publicly that China would need to approve any sale of TikTok's operations, directly contradicting the CEO's claims of independence from Beijing. And then Donald Trump reversed his position on the ban entirely. Jeff Yass, the billionaire whose firm Susquehanna International Group owns approximately 15% of ByteDance, a personal stake estimated at $12 to $34 billion, met Trump at a political retreat in early March 2024, days before Trump publicly reversed his TikTok stance. Yass subsequently donated $16 million to Trump's super PAC. Trump joined TikTok in June 2024, gained 15 million followers within 3 months, and credited the platform with helping him reach young voters. He issued 5 consecutive executive orders delaying enforcement of the law. The deal that closed on January 22, 2026 created the TikTok USDS joint venture LLC. Oracle, Silver Lake, and Abu Dhabi's MGX each took 15%, a combined 45% stake. Other investors made up 30.1%. ByteDance retained 19.9%, just under the 20% threshold that would trigger the ban. The US business was valued at approximately $14 billion. Oracle's own stake in the venture was subsequently disclosed at roughly $2 billion in a quarterly filing. An algorithm trained by ByteDance, now licensed to a new American entity and being retrained on US data by Oracle, is still the same underlying architecture. Northeastern University's Crystal Wilson put it plainly: we don't know anything about how that algorithm is trained or how it's being assessed. We have to entirely put our faith in Oracle that they're going to do these really rigorous assessments. It's a lot of faith to put into that organization. Around the world, different governments made different choices. India banned TikTok outright in June 2020. At the time, India was TikTok's largest market outside of China, with approximately 200 million users. The ban was made permanent in January 2021. Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, and domestic apps absorbed the displaced audience. Australia passed a law in November 2024 banning social media for anyone under 16, effective December 2025. Platforms face fines up to 49.5 million Australian dollars for non-compliance. Albania enacted a full national ban in 2025 after a teenager was stabbed following an online dispute attributed to TikTok. The European Commission in February 2026 issued preliminary findings that TikTok's engagement mechanics, infinite scroll, autoplay, push notifications, personalized recommendations, breach European regulations on addictive design, with potential fines equivalent up to 6% of ByteDance's global turnover. Now, Gen Z is already shaped, but the generation coming up behind them may be in more trouble. Generation Alpha, people born between 2010 and 2024, is the first cohort raised from birth in the post-algorithmic short-form video era. Nearly 2/3 of children ages 8 to 10 spend up to 4 hours daily on social media. Children aged 4 to 18 spend an average of 120 minutes daily on TikTok specifically, the highest of any app in any category. 68% of social media users aged 11 to 12 had TikTok accounts despite the 13+ minimum age requirement. The average Gen Alpha child gets a first smartphone at age 8. The neuroscience here is particularly alarming because the brain's prefrontal cortex, a region responsible for impulse control, planning, and complex reasoning, doesn't fully mature until approximately age 25. What happens to a brain trained by dopamine loops and variable ratio reinforcement schedules during every single prior development stage is not yet fully known. The preliminary human data, the brain imaging research, and the testimony from teachers and employers trying to work with this incoming generation are all pointing in the same direction. Gen Z men and women are not just politically divergent, they are also socially divergent. 63% of Gen Z men currently report being single compared to 34% of Gen Z women. The political radicalization the platform accelerated is also a social fracture. Two groups with incompatible political realities, who each believe the other is extreme, are struggling to form relationships. There is no modern statistical equivalent to the 63 versus 34%. The regulatory landscape is finally accelerating. In the US, the Kids Online Safety Act and COPA 2.0 both moved through committee in early 2026. The EU's regulatory framework represents the most aggressive approach globally, managing age verification, banning default infinite scroll and autoplay for minors, and requiring algorithmic transparency. If European regulators succeed in forcing genuine design changes, it will represent the most significant reshaping of social media architecture since TikTok itself reshaped the industry in 2018. The neuroplasticity research offers some real, if modest, grounds for optimism. Young brains can recover with reduced exposure. Studies show 32% restoration of attentional capacity after 1 week off social media. The patterns are not necessarily permanent, but Only 11% of users who tried quitting cold turkey stayed off for more than 2 weeks. And the structural incentives for platforms and creators and advertisers, and even for the users themselves, all point toward increased consumption instead of reduced. The 31-point youth gender gap from 2024 will not resolve itself in a single election cycle. The young men and the young women who voted in 2024 will still be voting in 2028, 32, and 36. They will be in the workforce, in relationships, in positions of institutional power. The political polarization that TikTok and YouTube and the broader attention economy collectively accelerated is not a temporary connection tied to any one election. It's a structural feature of how this generation was informed and how it formed its worldview, and it will define how they work, vote, relate to each other, and understand the world for decades. The TikTok divestiture deal preserves the status quo with American-sounding ownership, and the algorithm remains functionally under ByteDance's influence through licensing. The US version may gradually lose its competitive edge as the retrained algorithm diverges from ByteDance's global system, potentially ceding market share to YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels over time. Or it may not. The track record of government-mandated algorithmic reforms at this scale is essentially non-existent. The deeper problem has nothing to do with Chinese ownership. The deeper problem is that short-form, algorithmically personalized video is fundamentally at odds with the cognitive requirements of a functioning democracy, a productive economy, and healthy human development. The research has moved well past the question of whether the damage is real. Now the question is whether or not it's reversible, and whether the political will to do something about it will materialize before a second generation inherits the full consequences. The algorithm achieved exactly what it was designed to do. The question of what happens next belongs to the generation still growing up inside of it, and to the lawmakers, parents, and researchers who are running out of time to do something about it.